This is part one of a two-part series where I break down all of the takeaways from an Alex and Layla Hormozi business workshop. I paid 10 grand to be there, and it was jam-packed with so many learnings that I decided to split it into two parts. In the first part here, you're going to learn about what makes a business valuable, what makes a business less valuable, one of Alex's core business philosophies and Layla's, and a beautiful sales lesson that Alex put on during one of his presentations, and more. So if you have ever been interested in one of these workshops, or you just generally want to hear some very good high-level business takeaways from people who are worth more than $100 million and they derive their revenue from growing businesses, then this podcast is for you. So hope you guys enjoy. What is going on, y'all? My wife and I just got back this week from a business workshop. We flew out to Vegas. We spent 10 grand. This was a acquisition.com, Alex and Layla Hormozi general business workshop. And the purpose of this episode is I'm going to recap all of my takeaways, mainly to crystallize my own thoughts and learnings. And I'm going to share them with you in the event that it's helpful. First, who am I? My name is Ryan Rice. I'm a full-time real estate investor. In the event that you are new to the channel, I spent 14 years working for a Fortune 30 company as an employee and ventured off like a crazy person in a completely separate industry back in 2021. And I just started my 5th year of running a real estate business. I do this in the event that it can help you. So I'm just going to roll right through these learnings. I have some notes here, and I'm going to roll through my notes. First and foremost, what would a business workshop be without learning the fundamentals of what makes a business valuable? So if you don't know who Alex and Layla Hormozi are, they're in their 30s. I don't know how old they are. And ran a bunch of businesses, made a bunch of money, are worth over $100 million. And now their business is essentially private equity. And so their job is to grow businesses. So the context of everything I'm about to tell you is from a net worth of two individuals that are worth more than 100 million. They've gotten that worth from businesses that they've run. So at least that's evidence enough to me that they understand the fundamentals of business. So how to make a business more valuable. Some of these are kind of like a duh, but first and foremost, revenue and revenue growth. So not just revenue itself. And also, when I say how to make a business more valuable, I don't mean from like a pure profit standpoint. I mean from the perspective of an investor, right? So they run private equity. Their job is to invest in companies. And I love the perspective of if a business is more valuable to an investor, that probably means it's more intrinsically valuable. And that thought kind of helps me crystallize how I want to grow my business and how I can effectively make my business more valuable. So anyways, how to make a business more valuable from the perspective of an investor and the business as a product in and of itself. So revenue and revenue growth, obviously the more revenue, the more valuable the business. And revenue growth. So revenue growth just defined as consistent year over year revenue growth, right? So if a business doubled, tripled, doubled, but then flatlined, that business would be less valuable than a business that doubled, and just has continued on that trend. EBITDA and EBITDA margin. So EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, which is just a fancy word for all of the money that the business makes before it reinvests any money back into the company. So, for example, a company that's heavy in manufacturing costs, they're going to grow to a certain point and then they need to invest in new manufacturing, right? EBITDA would be their profit before they reinvest in another manufacturing plant. Every business has a different way of investing back into it. And so what makes a business more valuable is their profit before investment back into the business. And then, of course, the margin of that profit as a percent of revenue. The higher the margin percent, the more valuable the business is. Revenue retention. And this is a good one because my specific business does not have any revenue retention. And so naturally, it makes my business less valuable. And it's something I'm constantly thinking about. How can I build some sort of revenue retention within my own business? And revenue retention is just defined as you have monthly recurring or reoccurring revenue, right? The same clients are either purchasing again or purchasing more, some sort of consistent revenue stream. Whereas in my business, I have to pay every single time I want to acquire a new customer. That is a less valuable business generally than a business who continues to get more and more money from the same customer. And then lastly, sales and marketing efficiency. And what they mean by that is they define it by a ratio they call LTV to CAC, which stands for lifetime value of a single customer, and a ratio of that number to how much it costs to acquire a customer. And as a general rule, if a business has a 10-to-1 LTV to CAC ratio or greater, they consider that very healthy. And obviously, the higher that is, the more valuable that business is going to be. It is going to be significantly more difficult for a business to be very valuable or grow in a strong manner if that LTV to CAC ratio is under a 10. Some industries are very difficult. My industry, for example, my business's LTV to CAC ratio last year was a 5.5 to 1, which in my industry is actually pretty darn good. And so it goes to show the intrinsic value of a business may have a lot to do with the nature of the specific industry and the specific type of business. And I think that's good perspective for me as a real estate investor to think about, because if I can make my business more valuable to outside investors, it means that my business is going to have more intrinsic value as well. So it's just something I'm constantly thinking about. What makes a business less valuable? AKA, we want to do the reverse of these things. So they listed 5 things, and I thought each of these 5 things were very good. First is key man risk. Key man risk is just defined as if, as the owner of the business, you were to step away for 2 weeks or a month or go on vacation or get hit by a bus, does the business continue to grow at the same rate? And for most businesses, the room that I was in was 100 people, I think 50 businesses. It was a very impressive room. I think the average business was like 2 to 3 million a year. There was a guy who did 334 million in his business last year that was in the room. And there were many businesses that were over 10 million a year. But most of those businesses have key man risk, because as a small business, it's pretty uncommon that if an owner steps away, that business is going to continue to be able to operate and grow at the same rate as before. And obviously, extrinsically to a private equity firm, a business is going to be worth more if the results and the outcomes of that business are not reliant upon one person. And it's such a good learning too, because your business will become intrinsically more valuable if you can remove the need for your business to operate to be solely dependent on you. And so I think that's good perspective as well. The second thing that makes a business less valuable is key customer risk. And how they define that is, there any one customer in your business that has 20% or more of your revenue? If so, you have a key customer risk, because if that one customer leaves, then your business's revenue drops by 20%. That would be significant key customer risk. Third was single channel risk. What that means is, of all of the methods that you are acquiring customer, is there any one method that you are getting more than 70% of your customers on? And the reason is because if something were to happen to that method of acquiring customers and you lose 70% of your customers, obviously that wouldn't be good. And so the caveat here, something they did advocate for, and I will talk a little bit more about this in the beginning, is that if you are new, there is significant greater benefit than maximizing one channel before you start something new and go into a second channel. And so it's expected to have single channel risk in the beginning. And they gave guidance of, get to $1 million in revenue from one channel first before pivoting to a new channel. And the reason for that is when you do pivot to a new channel, there's always going to be new learnings, and it's possible that the existing channel suffers if you switch to a second. And so if you can get to $1 million a year from one channel first and then switch, that was kind of the guidance that they gave. I thought that was good insight. The fourth is market risk. Are you in an industry or a market that is increasing and growing year over year, or are you in a market that is decreasing year over year? And, as I think about this with real estate's interesting because technically since COVID, the market has been decreasing year over year. And it's been difficult since COVID and since interest rates have risen to grow because if anyone got into real estate like I did in COVID, we got into real estate when it was at the top, right? So it's only been declining, and that has made it a little bit more challenging because real estate specifically has been a declining market in the short term. Now, in the long term, real estate is always a market that it has and sees growth. And so I think it's important to have that perspective. Is the market that you go into, what does the short-term market growth look like? And then what does the long-term market growth look like? But that's something I'm constantly thinking about because, for example, not to go on too much of a side tangent here, but if any of you follow the 18-year real estate cycle, the real estate industry is ripe for some sort of correction. And so that would project out that over the next 5 years, it's likely that the real estate market continues to decline. And I think that makes it really, really important to build your business as efficient as possible and to just get really, really good because things might get hard over the next 5 years. But what I'm confident of is over the next 10, over the next 15 years, the real estate market is always going to be increasing. And so thinking about market risk from that perspective is beneficial. And, most of you that listen to this, I think are interested in real estate. But if you are in a different business, I think thinking about, is my market increasing or is it decreasing, is good perspective. Because let's say we go to a hypothetical extreme and you're in the business of newspapers. Well, that industry is declining 25% year over year. So your business has to grow 25% year over year just to break even and stay flat. And so thinking about what does your industry look like is helpful from what type of risk that your business has. And then lastly, the last thing that makes a business less valuable is data risk. And what they mean by this, and again, this is one of those categories where every single new business owner is going to be in this category, maybe until, $1 million, 5 million, up to 10 million in revenue per year. And data risk essentially means, do you have to pull data or is data pushed to you, right? So very simply put, it's, do you have to pull data or is data pushed to you? And so if you are someone who has a lot of your data in Google Sheets, well, that would be an example of data risk. If you are in a business and you can pull a dashboard and you have your most important KPIs and all of your financial metrics and everything you can look at on one screen, well, that would be an example of low data risk. And so obviously for me and where I am in my business, I'm not necessarily worried about data risk. I know over the next 5 to 10 years, that's something that I'm going to want to move towards eliminating, but inherently every new business is going to have data risk up until a certain point. So that kind of covers what makes a business more valuable and what makes a business less valuable. And I went through that very quickly, mainly because I just wanted to summarize the main points for you. But I do want to emphasize there were significant amounts of nuances that were great to hear. And I won't go into detail because the purpose of this is not to reiterate the entire workshop for you, but rather pull out the most important things. The next learning was more, better, new. I've listened to a significant amount of Alex and Layla's content, and I hear them say this all the time in their content. And it's a framework that they follow with everything, whether it's content or of growing their business, whatever the case, they talk about more, better, new a lot. And what was really interesting being at this workshop is not only did Alex and Layla both talk about more, better, new, and when they were asked questions, they would answer in more, better, new frameworks. It was clearly something that was embedded in their brains. But their entire leadership team So we did these little breakouts, and the leaders of specific divisions of their portfolio company. So for example, like marketing, sales, strategy and operations, hiring, or people, each of them we would have breakout sessions with. And literally every single one of them, as we were diving into specific constraints or specific problems within our businesses, not only did the words more, better, new come out of their mouths, but the frameworks and the answers in which they gave were all centered around more, better, new. And so I'm going to communicate to you my understanding, my takeaway of what more, better, new means. Simply put, more, better, new means first, we do more of the thing that is currently working. And we do so much of the thing that is currently working until we have substantial volume to be able to look back and say, okay, what was the best performing of that thing and what was the worst performing? And then how can I do more of the best performing? And it's important to do more before you do anything else, because if you don't have enough volume through your pipeline to be able to analyze what is or isn't working, then you're just guessing. And so doing significant volume first so you can see what is and what isn't working is most important. The better comes from, okay, let's say you push substantial volume and you get the top 10% of whatever it is that you're evaluating. Well, then you can say, okay, how can we only do the top 10% quality of whatever it is that we're focusing on going forward? And so then our focus shifts from pure volume to just getting better at everything that we were doing, right? And a lot of times it's this accordion of you do more and then you do better. And then when you start doing better, well, then you have to do more of the better. So then you do more and then you do better, right? And it's this constant accordion of more and then better and then more and then better. And how my understanding of what Alex, his philosophy on this is you don't move on to something new until you have exhausted more, better, more, better, more, better. And I'll give the example that's popping into my mind is he talks about all the time how he wrote his book. And I guess his most recent book, he wrote 19 different renditions of. And I think he wrote 11 or 12 before he rewrote the entire book after he soft launched it and people gave him feedback. And he's like, shit, I got to rewrite the whole thing. And I don't know that there's a more perfect example of more, better, more, better, more, better, more, better. And he literally just kept doing that until he wrote the book and said, I don't know what else I can do to make this any better. And the contrary strategy to that might be just to, do your quote best to write a book and not follow that constant more, better framework. And then you launch the book and then maybe it does okay. And then you write a new book to capture more sales or whatever goal that you're trying to accomplish. And so I think that's, their version of more, better, new versus what most entrepreneurs and what most business people do is it always appears easier on the surface to try something new, right? We've exhausted this channel or, maybe this isn't working and I need to try to pivot and do something else. That's always the easy thing. And the problem is every time we start something new, we find that there's shit in that thing and that it's hard and that we have to get in and learn. And then because it's hard, that's when we decide to pivot into something new. And so while, again, I've heard this framework from them, more, better, new, before, to observe every single leader constantly repeating more, better, new over and over, and same with Alex and Layla up on stage, it really drilled into me how important that framework is. The next lesson was this beautiful sales lesson from Alex. And this isn't like a lesson that he intended to teach, but it's something I picked up on. He got up on stage both days and gave incredibly powerful, incredibly meaningful, and valuable presentations. And the desired outcome of these presentations, as I saw them, was to add value to a room full of business owners. How can he get up on stage, speak for a couple hours, and give the most value he can to the audience in that room. Well, what was very interesting is there was a portion of his presentation where he talked about sales. And if you know Alex, his background, he's very talented at both sales and marketing. And he walks the audience through this sales framework, and then he's interchanging back and forth between teaching the framework and then using the framework on the audience for an upsell for additional education. And it was a masterful presentation, because I think when people who are educating an audience on something, especially if they're trying to sell them something, to teach sales and then blatantly use what you're teaching on the audience is just amazing. Because what it means is that if you do sales the right way, there's no slimy, weird, or unproductive way to go about actually selling someone on something. Because if you truly selling someone on something, is truly serving a need that they had. And so I thought it was just this really great example of, if you do sales the right way, you can blatantly teach sales and sell someone on the thing while you're teaching them the framework that you're teaching them. And as long as your focus is adding value, then it can still be valuable and sell someone at the same time. So it was just this beautiful little sales lesson that I don't think was intended, but obviously I think he purposefully did that. But it was just an observation that I had. The next lesson was, when you invest in education, and for me, this is what the investment of this workshop was for my wife and I, the return that you get on that type of investment is a choice that you make. And what I mean by that, I think there's a lot of people who don't believe in the alternative education space, and therefore that belief prevents them from investing in alternative education. And because they have that belief, it prevents them from moving faster than at the current pace that they're capable of moving. Alex told this really cool story that I'll tell you to illustrate what I mean by this. In the beginning of Alex's marketing career, business career, one thing that he was focused on was learning the skill of marketing. And him and a business partner went to this workshop to learn how to run Facebook ads. They spent $3,000 on this workshop. And this was $3,000 on a workshop when no one really even knew. Nobody was running Facebook ads, and it was this new thing. So, imagine dropping $3,000 on something that nobody knows what it is. And it was very clearly, quote, suspect. Well, they spent $3,000. They go to this seminar, and Alex takes it very seriously. He takes a bunch of notes, and he goes and he implements the thing. His business partner leaves the event and is like, I don't know how that's going to be useful for me, or at least that was my comprehension of the story that Alex told. And so we didn't do anything with it. And Alex left the event and dove into it and told himself, I will be the best student from this seminar, and I will figure out everything there is to know about Facebook marketing. And now he's built a business empire, and a lot of the businesses that he's built have been on the back of Meta ads. And what a phenomenal lesson, right? I think you can make a choice when you invest in alternative education, whether or not it's going to be valuable to it. And I walked into that workshop and I told myself, I don't care what happens. I am going to be the most prepared. I am going to invest all of my attention. I'm going to take this very seriously. I'm going to get everything I possibly can out of this event. And what was kind of neat when I got there, someone that leads the event actually came up to me and was like, holy shit, you were the only one that did this and that with your prep work. I actually shared it with the team. Really nice job. And what was cool because of that, there was a different type of connection. I don't know if I would have made a connection with that specific leader at the workshop there had I not done that. And so preparation alone got me that, but it also just generally got me more prepared for the event. And so even if for some reason that workshop was complete shit, which in my opinion, it was the very opposite. And I think a lot of people there gave really good feedback on it. But even if it was terrible, if I commit and say, I don't care of the quality, I will be the best at this shitty thing, then I'm going to get a value out of it. And so, especially in today's day and age where it seems like there is this group of people on social media who believe that anyone who teaches anything about education are grifters. And I don't know. I reject the whole notion that alternative education is not valuable. And I truly believe that the return that you get on alternative education is simply a choice that you make. And so if you're out there and you're listening and you want to figure out how to go faster, you want to figure out how to expand your level of knowledge, how to simply improve at a faster rate, then I'd strongly urge you to consider investing in alternative education, whether it's seminars, workshops, coaching, but do it from the mindset of, I don't care how bad or how good this will be. I'm not choosing to do it because I have absolute certainty that this is the best possible way for me to spend this money right now. But I will make a choice that I will leave this seminar, event, workshop, putting my best foot forward, having nothing left in the tank. And as a result, I will get a return regardless of the quality. That's how I've always approached any sort of alternative education. And I thought it was kind of neat to hear Alex tell the story that he did, that I told you about Facebook marketing, because it did a nice job of taking the viewpoint that I have and putting it into a clear story that everyone can understand.